Good morning, Happy Valley, and welcome back to another edition of the Penn State 365 podcast. I'm your host, Richie Schnyderite, joined by my co-host, Callghan-Croley. Dylan, what's going on, man?
And I just can't believe it's the final week of the season is here. The season's
Crazy.
gone by way too quick. I mean, as you can tell, my wife already has us decorating for Christmas. I'm personally a let's get through Thanksgiving. I love Thanksgiving. But yeah, I can't believe we're final weeks of November here, and bowl season's right around the corner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to comment on the Christmas thing, but you said it already. It's a little early,
It's
a little bit,
early.
but hey, it is what it is. You gotta
Exactly.
happy life. What do you call it? So let's just do a quick recap of that Penn State Rutgers game. Not the prettiest thing in the world, and on top of it, QB goes down. So, what are your overall thoughts? I guess.
Obviously, if Tom could have lined up, would have loved to go more in depth on this game, but we'll keep it kind of short here for today. It was a game that's for sure. I mean, the offense, I thought, it wasn't going to change a ton, and that's to be expected. Where they were 10 weeks into the season, 11 games in the season. There was never going to be a ton of change. But I think it shows while Mike Yursich definitely did have his parts in Penn State's struggles overall, a lot of it is also just talent at this point. The wide receiver room is not good at all. There needs to be quite a bit of turnover, I think, in that room this offseason. They're going to have to hit the portal hard at that position because the wide receivers just can't get open. And Rutgers is a good defense, but 11 games, 11 data points. The wide receiver room is what it is. This offense is what it is. I thought Drew had his ups and downs when he was on the field. He definitely, shows that talent still, but his inconsistencies, I have to be somewhat concerned now that he's 20 plus games into his college career, 11 career starts. But I still think he has that chance to be that guy for Penn State, but it's going to take that next offense coordinator to unlock that next level in him, and we'll see if that is possible. I think that's something that we'll probably end up maybe talking about here a little bit today. But that offense coordinator search, probably going to be finished up in the next 2 to 3 weeks tops. I wouldn't be surprised if we heard something early December about that, but. The offense is what it is. I think at the end of the day, that's my biggest takeaway. The play con was not great under Yursich, but I think to a degree he was also being handicapped by the wide receiver room. The running backs solid, but Nicholas Singleton continues to miss a couple holes. I know James Franklin talked about him evolving as a player, and he's better overall as a blocker, as a receiver. And whatnot. But I mean, he missed a pretty big opportunity for a touchdown in that Rutgers game, I believe, in the first half. He had a cutback lane wide open to the left, and instead he decides to run straight into a pile of linemen, and just easier said than done. But how do you not see that hole right there? And Penn State, great talent, great talented team, but just too many mental mistakes this year over and over again offensively, and that's why they're going to probably finish 10-2, which is great. Most programs in the country are going to accept that, but for Penn State at this point, it's Groundhog's Day. It's they always are falling short.
Yeah, you're not kidding. Starting with quarterback, I know Drew obviously got hurt, but like you said, there was a lot of concerns with Drew. Beau comes in, runs for like a 40-yard play, and it's like, shit. Do we have I know we don't have an OC currently, but do we have a potential quarterback controversy starting next year's camp or spring training?
I'm going to say no, just because I think it's clear that they don't trust Beau to throw the ball right now. And I'm not sure that's going to change drastically going forward over one offseason. But that being said, I think it does say something that the offense's running game looks a lot better when there's a mobile quarterback there. And now we've seen Drew over the last month, he's shown
Yeah.
the ability to take off and run, and he does it quite well. I mean, his biggest flaw is that he doesn't slide. I mean, that's why he left that game on
Yeah.
Saturday with an injury. Um, he fast forward quickly. James Franklin believes he's going to be able to go on Friday at Tuesday's practice. That's what it seemed like. That continues to be the case. If he's able to go, okay. But yeah, he took that huge hit on Saturday. It was hard to tell at first if it was a shoulder or a concussion because he got up and he didn't look right, and then he stayed in, and then a few plays later I don't know if they took him out or he checked himself out, but it was clear after a while that it was a shoulder injury, and but yeah, I think it does say something that the offense looks better with a mobile quarterback. Now, I'm not going to say they can't have success with Drew, but it is having that mobile capability in your quarterback does open a lot of things up, and we saw that with Beau. They didn't have to throw the ball with Beau. It was a lot like what we saw with Michigan against Penn State 2 weeks ago. Michigan ran the ball 32 straight times to end that game or something like that. Penn State ran it 17 of 18 plays. I forget how many plays Beau was in there for, but Beau threw one pass attempt all game in the second half, and he played all but 3 minutes that second half.
It is pretty crazy.
Which I think says about the offense, but also the fact that Beau only threw one pass. We haven't seen Beau throw the ball at all this season. That I think that says something probably about their trust level in Beau right now as a quarter passer as well.
Yeah. Now that being said, I do still think down the line, like Beau does have an extra year compared to Drew, so I think down the line he could be the starting quarterback. But yeah, if Drew, like Franklin said on Tuesday, is healthy, he's probably going to start, and I expect him to start versus Michigan State on Friday.
I expect him to go Friday, and we'll see what happens. I mean, it just I keep saying I feel like a broken record, but you feel like Penn State has to find just something to build off offensively, whether that is Drew finishing off with a big game or two, a wide receiver breaking out. You feel like they need to find something to kind of grasp onto, some type of positive offensive momentum to head into the offseason, to head into whoever the new offensive coordinator may be.
Yeah, totally agree. Before we get into offensive coordinator talk, I did want to single out the wide receiver room just for the sole fact that this is such a mind-boggling stat. Cephas had 5 targets. Guess how many receptions he had?
Well, I know the stat. Is it 0?
0. 0 receptions. That's just insane.
I think Penn State had 2 wide receivers with receptions. Liam Clifford and was it Caden Saunders? No, Amari Evans?
No, Amari Evans. Who they put him in again, and he makes a play. And it's starting to piss me off a little bit because it's like this guy was pretty good last year as a freshman, true freshman. Then they didn't use him at all this year. And it sounded like he was pushing Wallace for playing time at the beginning of camp. It makes no sense.
And I think
it's mind-boggling.
It's interesting. We didn't see much of Amari Evans or Caden Saunders this season, but then on Saturday we saw both of those guys play, and we saw Amari Evans early in the game too, which feels notable because usually we'd only see Amari Evans late. But Marty brings it up on the pod. I've said it again, sounding like a broken record, but Amari Evans goes from a guy who's on the field on the game-winning drive in the first game of his career last season at Purdue, and then this year can't sniff the field. Well, what happened there? Whether that's
crazy.
What is he doing or not doing in practice that hasn't earned him the playing time? We only get obviously a 15-20 minute window every week, but it's quite vanilla when we're in there, and everybody looks good during a 15-20 minute window. We're not able to see what these guys look like every single snap of practice. So like I said, they need to desperately, I think, find something just to grasp in that wide receiver room heading the offseason. I think you feel good about some of the guys, and based off how their season's gone, I think there's a good chance you return guys like Dante Cephas, Keandre Lambert-Smith, and Trey Wallace all in my mind should return. Dante Cephas probably wouldn't get drafted after this performance this season. Keandre Lambert-Smith, maybe, but I think with a good season, he could get himself into a fourth round pick perhaps in the future. But right now, I'm not sure he's draftable. Maybe he goes in the back half of day 3, but um, I think there's a good chance Penn State returns their top 3 receivers from this year. But at the same time, those top 3 guys really couldn't get going this year. So is that necessarily a good thing too?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, number one, I think you have to hit the portal. Number two, like you said, I do think a lot of these guys do come back. Cephas is an intriguing one because if this man really can't learn the playbook at all, I wouldn't be shocked. And he's a graduate transfer technically too, so he might just dip and they might be okay with
Cephas
it too.
is really interesting because there's a whole argument if he got here in January, would things have changed with him? And yeah, maybe, but he's now had June was 5 months ago. He's had 6 months to learn the playbook, and when there's issues out in the field with the offense or somebody doesn't know the play, it often feels like it's Dante Cephas not knowing the play, and to a point, it's just you kind of have to. You either know the playbook or don't. So that's a great point. I do expect some attrition in that room. I would expect we see some transfers out, but I think right now there's a good chance those top 3 do return. But yes, they each have their positives for sure, and all 3 have question marks. You got Dante Cephas. Can he learn the playbook? Keandre Lambert-Smith. Can he be consistent? That's his biggest issue. And then Trey Wallace, he's kind of steady Eddie. You know what you're going to get, but he hasn't been able to stay healthy this year. So I mean, Trey Wallace is probably like the safest bet of the 3 in terms of being just a quality wide receiver week in and week out. But he probably also has the lowest floor of the 3 too. I know lowest floor, lowest ceiling of the 3. He probably has the highest floor. But.
Yeah. My other question is too, I know given he just came this offseason, but how much I don't even know how to word this.
Yeah.
Marquise Higgins, how much of a leash does he realistically have? The wide receiver room did not improve at all whatsoever this season.
I think we said that the wide receiver room took a step back now.
Do you blame Stubblefield? Do you blame him?
I think do
you just rotate a new wide receiver coach again?
I don't think you can. I think he needs some leash. I don't think Penn State cannot afford to go through another wide receiver coach this quickly. This is wide receiver coach already number 5 in 6 years for James Franklin. It's not been pretty.
Yeah.
But this is also a position that he's consistently struggled at hiring. I think he does get a leash. I think part of this is Stubblefield issues. I think there's a lot that goes behind the scenes that we're not going to go into on here. But I think there's a leash for Higgins. I think he's proven in his career that he can be a very good wide receivers coach. We'll see how well he can continue to recruit. I mean, that would be the make or break factor here. He recruited well at Virginia for Virginia standards, but he needs to recruit at a higher standard at Penn State for Penn State to be successful. He's done a good job this cycle. I don't think there's any, disagreement on that. Peter Gonzalez has been very good for Pittsburgh Central Catholic as a senior. Tyzer Denmark has a ton of upside as well. Josiah Brown was looking good before he blew his knee out. I think he did well this first cycle, but he got to continue to hit on those top targets going forward. But yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of not a lot of. I think we're going to see some people coming in and out of the program at that position, get some fresh faces in that wide receiver room. It almost feels like it needs a culture change, I guess. And I think that takes more than 1 year to put together. But I think he kind of didn't have, a full cupboard of talent per se, or top talent from the Stubblefield era of Penn State wide receiver coaching. So I think he has another year or two here at least. to turn this around.
Now let me piggyback off that one. If Sider doesn't get the OC job, which we kind of don't expect him to, is that it for him? You think like this is like I'm done, like I can't do this anymore?
I'm not sure because he's still.
I feel like there's got to be some kind of movement in that staff.
I think there. Yeah, I think there's.
Happens every year.
I think there's a good chance that we see some sort of movement, but only for I would say positive reasons. Is Manny Diaz going to get a coaching job? Right now, like he absolutely should be a head coach again. I don't think there's no doubt about that. But is there a job right now that he would be willing to take? I don't think he's leaving Penn State for any job. I think he's leaving Penn State for a decent Power 5 coaching job. He's not going to get the job to the levels of Miami, but he should be able to get like a Mississippi State is a decent Power 5 coaching job. Now, I don't think they're targeting him, but that level of job I think would make sense for him. I think there could be movement. You could look at somebody like Poindexter. Does he finally get a coaching job? But when it comes back to Sider, I think he's quite content with his role at Penn State. Would he like to be an offensive coordinator someday? Sure, but I think if he wants to be a head coach, he doesn't have to be an offensive coordinator per se. I think he's shown a great track record already as a recruiter, as a running backs coach, and throughout his career, he's had a proven track record. He's very high regarded by the Penn State program, by everybody in the Lash building. He's very highly valued by the Penn State administration as well. So I think they're going to, even if it's not as an offensive coordinator, he's still going to have that co-OC title probably come next season. And he's always going to be one of those guys when we're talking about pay raises. He's going to be at the top of the line to always begin a pay raise. He's one of the most important assistants on the staff. And would he like to be OC? Perhaps. I don't know. I don't have that insight, but I think he's also somebody he knows what his role is. He's very content with what his role is, and he understands how important his role is within Penn State, and he's okay with that for now. I mean, he talked about it earlier this year about if Penn State is his final stop, he's 100% cool with that. Like, he's not going to necessarily go and look for another job just for the sake of looking for another job. It's going to have to be, it sounds like, the right fit for him to leave. Florida targeted him to leave, when Billy Napier was taken over. But I think they wanted him as like tight ends coach or something. So, I mean, and that's a pretty big job to turn down there. So I think Sider is here until he gets probably an offensive coordinator job that he can't refuse, or a head coaching job.
I'm glad you kind of mentioned that, because obviously Florida's in, I don't even know,
dire
turmoil.
straits.
You want to call it that? They're just a mess. Yeah, and if Napier does get shit canned, and then a new coach comes in, Florida OC job would be kind of open. So I mean, it might be a hard one for him to turn down.
Florida guy. I have no doubt the next Florida coach is going to be all over. If Napier gets fired, would be all over Sider. And I think, if there's any movement with Miami or Florida State too, like they're all in play there as well. And I'm sure if there's head coaching openings in Florida, he would be a candidate for there as well. I mean, his reputation is well known. He's a terrific recruiter, especially in Florida. I mean, he's one of the biggest reasons Penn State has had success in Florida. But I also think because of what he's done, what he's been able to do with Penn State, he's put Penn State in a spot where even after he's gone, the Nittany Lions are still going to be able to recruit running backs well, still be able to recruit Florida well, and that's a huge credit to Sider. I think his impact has been felt during his tenure already, and it's going to be felt until he leaves and well beyond when he leaves. As long as James Franklin is here, obviously if the coaching staff completely changes, that can change how you recruit certain areas. But as long as James Franklin is at Penn State, I think they're going to recruit those places well, and a lot of that's because of Sider.
Yeah, no kidding. Next thing I wanted to touch on was offensive coordinator talk. We haven't been hearing a lot, but it does sound like the one name consistent will be Joe Morehead.
I mean,
Franklin's pretty, quiet about these things and keeps these things pretty close vested. And Joe Morehead's the guy that everybody immediately said, "Oh, this is a Joe Morehead type hire for Penn State." And there was a question as would he want to leave a head coaching job to become Penn State's OC again? And it remains to be seen if that's going to be the case. But every little bit of chatter that you have heard, that I've heard, that some of our other colleagues at Rivals have heard, points towards Joe Morehead. Now, I will say the devil's advocate in me is saying this could be one hell of a smokescreen. Like, all signs are pointing towards Joe Morehead. So is there something going on behind the scenes that James Franklin is working on, perhaps? But I thought his comments on Tuesday post-practice about the offense coordinator search, about the hiring, were kind of interesting in not tipping his hand per se, but in a way, he kind of gave some insight to it. So I do think if it is Joe Morehead, we're going to know sooner than later if it's Joe Morehead. Like, maybe as soon as next week. Next week. If it goes beyond next week, I think it probably leans towards somebody else than Joe Morehead, just because Joe Morehead either wants the job or doesn't want the job. It's quite that. If he's the guy and Penn State wants to offer him, he either wants the job or doesn't want the job. Money is not an issue for Penn State here. They're going to be able to top whatever Akron is paying him.
I think it's like $500K. It's
nothing. Joe Morehead, $500,000. I mean, he was getting paid $1.1 million at Oregon to be the OC. Penn State can easily offer Joe Morehead above that 1.1. I would expect if he is the next offense coordinator at Penn State that he's getting top of the line offense coordinator money. And we're not privy to that information. Penn State doesn't release that information, but if you look at the USA Today assistant coach salary database, the top two coordinators in college football pay-wise are Garrett Riley and Ryan Grubb at $2 million. Jeff Lebby at Oklahoma, $1.9 million. Matt House, Louisiana State, $1.9. Jim Knowles at Ohio State, the DC, $1.9. I think Morehead is going to be probably pushing close to that, maybe not 1.9, but that 1.5 to 1.7 million dollar range. Money is not an issue here for Penn State, and if it's money that pries him away from an Akron head coaching job, then I think he's going to be the guy. But like I said, it's just one of those things that everybody's hearing Joe Morehead, everything is pointing towards Joe Morehead. It almost feels like it's a massive smokescreen, but I think at the end of the day, it's also kind of it was the easy answer all along. Now, is that necessarily a good thing for Penn State? Who knows? But we've talked about it. This is probably James Franklin's last chance at this offense coordinator hire. If this goes poorly, it's probably you're looking at a 2-3 year window. If this goes poorly, the buyout for James Franklin's quite a bit less. It's easier in that scenario for Penn State to make a change if they want to. But the clock is starting to tick, I think, on James Franklin, and this is a big one. So if he wants to go down or try to live and die by Joe Morehead, who helped lead him to a Big Ten championship before, all right, like that's understandable. But we will see ultimately what happens. But I think it's an interesting choice. I get it, but I think almost feels too easy in a way. But perhaps the obvious answer is the best answer sometimes.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens there. We should have some more news next week, probably.
Akron
on if it's Morehead or not.
Akron's going to finish up their season. Penn State finishing up on Friday.
Oh, yeah.
This could be a big weekend when it comes to the coaching carousel. Michigan State's closing in on their next hire. A couple other jobs are probably going to open up here. Maybe a couple hires be made. Could be a big weekend.
Yeah, no, of course. And speaking of big weekends, I guess I should say big week, not even weekend. Transfer portal is now officially open for
Yep.
grad transfers because the IVs are done, the
Tips.
FCS is
Allar saw
done.
those.
Two names, two names that have I don't know about Penn State connect. Well, one has Penn State connection. One has Pennsylvania connection. That have popped up in the portal so far.
Yeah,
Joey
blowing up.
Slackman. He's a defensive tackle out of UPenn. Extremely interesting background. He's a New York native. Actually committed to UPenn as a wrestler, as a 285-pound wrestler, state champ in high school. Wrestled for 2 seasons before transitioning to football, where he became a defensive tackle. He's listed 6'4", 300. He is last year he was number 27 DT in the country per Pro Football Focus. This year he is number 2 out of 830 qualifying defensive tackles per Pro Football Focus. So he's already in Pennsylvania. I mean, I said what he get like 20-something offers in the first 24 hours or something like that.
I think
be shocked
defensive
if they didn't
tackle is
offer
one
it.
of those positions that we expect him to hit pretty hard, along with wide receiver this offseason. I was I do know they've been in contact with him. They haven't offered him yet, but and we'll see if they do, because so many schools have offered him already. You wonder what they're trying to confirm, check. Maybe there's something they just haven't seen that they like, but the size definitely stands out. 6'4", 300 pounds. Highly productive for UPenn. Like you said, blowing up. He's blown up, receiving 20-plus offers already in the first 48 hours or so. Yeah, that'll definitely be a name to watch.
The other name I want to single out is offensive tackle Jalen Travis from Princeton. So he just entered the portal last night. Out of high school, he actually had a Minnesota offer, and that was his only one of 2 Power 5 offers. He also had Iowa State, but ended up choosing to go the Ivy League route, which makes sense. Princeton grad transfer, all that good stuff. Now he's a Minneapolis, Minnesota native. However, the connection here is that he's cousins with Ross Travis, who some of you might remember as a college basketball player for Penn State. Then, once he was done with Penn State as a college basketball player, somehow played in the NFL as a tight end for several years.
Ross Travis.
Yeah, it's quite the journey for him, which is kind of incredible because I thought he retired a lot earlier, and he was still playing in 2021. With Detroit Lions practice squad, I believe.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe the
that's
off-season squad.
A testament to his athleticism for sure. Offensive line, I think that's one of those positions where you can never have too much depth if you can go out and get somebody. I mean, we saw them offer Keyshawn Blackstock, Michigan State transfer, who wound up at, I think, Arkansas. So, I mean, we know they're going to be already going to be active when it comes to offensive linemen. So, that's definitely another name to know, and they've gone to the Ivy Leagues plenty before, as we've already seen, for offensive linemen.
Yeah, again, I'm just going based off the fact that it's PFF grades. Mind you, it's Ivy League, so there is a jump, but Hunter Norzad made that jump. He's been pretty solid.
Very well.
And sometimes it doesn't work out too. But this one, his PFF grades are he had 80.7 overall, 86.4 pass blocking, and 72.6 run blocking. He's had several games in the 90s. Like this kid just seems like he's pretty damn good. Plus the Penn State connection. I mean, I think you definitely reach out for the sole fact that Fashionu's gone.
Yeah.
So Wallace, we don't really know. And Drew Shelton seems to be like ready to go. He's waiting in the wings, just kind of. So I would assume Shelton's one of your tackles, and then you kind of have an opening, or you can even let Wallace fight off this guy and let him compete. Winner gets a spot.
Right. I agree, and like I said, Penn State, not even with Norzad, I remember they landed Eric Wilson a few years ago out of Harvard as well.
Yes.
So we've seen Ivy League guys. It is a big jump, but be able to make that jump, and some better than others. But I think offensive line is one of those positions where you can never have too much talent, never have too much competition. Penn State has a chance to be losing. Off the top of my head, they could lose 4 or 5 starting offensive linemen. Technically,
4.
There's a couple guys that could choose to return there.
but Olu
Mhm.
has to be gone this year. He has to be gone.
Yeah.
Caden Wallace has played himself into. I'm not sure if Caden has eligibility, but he's played himself into a draft pick.
I think he has one
I
more
think
year,
Sal
right?
Wormley may have another year of eligibility left as well, and then Hunter Norzad's out of eligibility. So, yeah,
It's so hard to tell with the crazy COVID year and everything, 'cause you never really know who has a year. They have a year, but they
yep,
don't really have a year on the roster, and it's a absolute mess. Thank God it's starting to
yeah. But
weed
I mean,
itself out.
we're entering
Um,
4 years post COVID year, and it's still
mhm.
always not fun to figure out who has. And then different programs have different ways of illustrating that. Like
Yeah.
Minnesota uses just how many years they've been with the program instead of redshirt
Hmm.
senior or whatever. But yeah, I mean JB
It's interesting.
Nelson. You look at JB Nelson's the only guy who may return out of the starters. Because
Yeah. So Norzad, Wallace, formerly are
yeah,
done completely.
I,
And
I
then
think
Fashanu,
I
yeah,
think Wallace
he's
may have one
gone.
here, but again, I think he's put himself into being a draft pick. He's been one of Penn State's best
Yeah.
linemen this year.
Yeah, they definitely need some weapons there, and you need some experience as well, especially if you're gonna have a brand new offensive line and your
Yeah,
expectations are the playoffs. So you have to
Wallace does
figure that
have a
out. But
year of eligibility. It looks like. Yeah,
he does. All right,
he's used
maybe I read that
5,
wrong then.
um,
Gotcha.
and then Wormley.
Makes sense. Like I said, the whole thing is complicated as hell. I think Wormley's done though, but
Wormley also
again,
has
could be
5,
wrong.
has played 5, but so he technically has a year. But yeah, we'll see how many of these guys return. But at most, you're looking at probably 2 return because I don't think
Yeah. So
all 3 of Nelson. Well, I think Nelson returns. I don't think both Wormley and Wallace return. I think one likely returns. So
mhm.
yeah, I mean that's a lot of turnover. Otherwise, you're gonna have to go with I think they're confident in a Drew Shelton. I think they're confident in uh, Vega Ione. But after
Mhm.
that, do they trust Javen Williams to step into a starting role as a redshirt freshman next year?
Yeah. So we'll wait and see. It's going to be
Uh,
an interesting offseason. There's going to be more
yeah,
portal updates,
I
so I'm sure we're going to have a lot more
believe.
stuff. They haven't sent out an offer yet, technically, but
Yeah,
they're
I
probably going
believe
to.
the portal officially opens for everybody else, or recruiting wise, at least December 4th, first week.
Yes, I thought
It's one of
fourth or
those
fifth.
days,
I
and then it
forget what it was.
ends first week of January, like
Yeah.
January 2nd or 3rd. So I mean,
Hmm.
yeah, we're about to hit. Um, you know, there is no off
There's
season.
no off season
We're
anymore.
about to
We're
hit
just.
a very busy part of the year. Football may be over for the most part, but
Mhm.
offense coordinator search is going to ramp up after Friday. Transfer
Mhm.
portal is going to be active for probably Penn State and everybody else. And then who knows? Whatever
Yep.
happens with the coaching
Bowl game.
carousel, we'll see how that ends up impacting Penn State there. Um, I would be a little surprised if Penn State has the same staff outside of usage for next season, just because you know this is a staff that has produced a ton of head coaches and coaches who have gone elsewhere.
Yeah. I mean, hell, Poindexter
Yeah,
was close last year. Manny Diaz is probably close to getting one.
there.
Who knows?
Yeah, I
You
mean,
never
I
really
think
know. Uh,
there. I think you can point to any of their members on the coaching staff as potential future head coaches. I don't know if a Phil Troutwine wants to be a head coach, but and I think
mhm.
obviously Deion Barnes isn't getting a head coaching job right now, but Deion Barnes did really good in his first season as a defensive line coach. He's going to be a hot
Oh yeah.
name in the next few years as for defense coordinator jobs, probably as he continues to work his way up. So, yeah, it's going to be a
Mhm.
good, fun offseason, an active offseason here for sure.
Yeah. No, of course. Last but not least, let's just roll through this one relatively quickly because we've been doing this for a while now.
Oh yeah, there's
Michigan
a game.
State Friday night, Ford Field. Yeah, there is one more game left. Team doesn't have a coach. They have a backup quarterback as their
Freshman
starter.
too.
freshman. Yeah, who, don't get me wrong, I think he's decent, but Caden Hauser
Yeah,
just it's this Penn State defense is gonna just
yeah, that's the
destroy
thing.
them.
Like,
If I'm
no, it's the
Tell me
thing.
I'm wrong.
It's like you look, and that's why I think almost against any team in the country right now, Penn State has a chance to beat them despite the offense. This defense, I think, can shut down pretty much 95% of the offenses in the
Mm-hmm.
country. They'd probably, struggle with an Oregon or a Washington offense a little bit. But and not even struggle. It would be similar to Ohio State Michigan games, but those are defenses you can score on them. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I don't see this one on Saturday being particularly close. I think the final score may be close, but I feel like it's gonna, if anything, would be like the Ohio State Michigan games for Penn State. The score may be close, but Michigan State's never really in the game. The one thing you could say is the
Mm-hmm.
Spartans haven't quit, and that's a testament to Harlan Barnett and that coaching staff for keeping this program together through this tough season. But yeah, I just don't see this one being particularly close because I don't know how Michigan State can score on this Penn State defense. I think Penn State's going to want to go out on a high note the regular season. There's a couple kids.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Cam King's last Penn State game could very well be in his hometown of Detroit. Obviously his brother Kobe, also from Detroit. Penn State recruits very well in Detroit. They target Michigan a ton. So, I mean, this is a big recruiting opportunity for Penn State as well. And I know Michigan State's going to be hosting some recruits for this game, even though they can't really talk to recruits and recruits can't really do anything special. But there will be some recruits in the stands for this one as well. So, I'm not really sure there's really much to say about this. I think all you're looking for in this game is if Drew plays and how he plays, how the wide receivers play in this game. We're 11. This is game 12. I mean, this is what Penn State is. What they are. There's not really much to go off anymore. And like I said, like with the Rutgers game, I would have liked to have a full podcast go over this game, but just in brief words, there's really not much you can say. Penn State is a 3 touchdown favorite and should win this game by probably 21, 20, 25 points. I mean, they're one of the best teams in the country in covering this season, and I don't expect that to change this week.
Yeah, I mean, I think they cover 100%. But like you said, they might play feisty in the beginning and make it close, and I think Penn State just opens up. You'll see the talent gap, I should say, and that's going to make a big difference. And
that's
pretty much it.
That's where Penn State is, I think, as a program is, and we've seen that this year against 95% of their opponents. They are just bigger, better, faster, stronger, and win almost by default. Against everybody else. It's a little bit more of a struggle. By everybody else, I obviously mean Ohio State and Michigan, but yeah, if anybody wants a little bit more in-depth reading on the Spartans, our Dub Jelson over the last few days has posted 2 Michigan State articles by the numbers as well as a first look at the Spartans. Both great in-depth looks at Michigan State.
Yeah. All right, Dylan, anything else before we sign off?
Yeah, no, just happy Thanksgiving to everybody. And I'm sure we'll be back sometime in the next few days to recap Michigan State, could digest maybe this entire season once it comes to an end here. And who knows, maybe we'll be talking about an offensive coordinator hire.
Yeah. So stay tuned. If you don't already, hit the subscribe button down below on YouTube or give us a follow on any of your podcasting apps that you're listening on. Also, give us a rating. It helps us grow the pod and get our name out there a little more and help us just kind of just make this the go-to podcast for Penn State athletics. For me and Dylan, it's another edition of the Penn State 365 podcast. Signing off.